All right, guys, I think she's done ordering, so I'm going to get started here pretty quick. So, Josh, right? Was it Josh? I missed David. I got Josh out of that, but I did warn you. But anyway, I've got you, Joy. I still remember her name. All right. All right. So my name is Gary Aker. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for Alchemist Nation. A lot of people are like, "What is Alchemist Nation?" We are basically a group of like-minded investors. We have live meetups up and down the East Coast, Charlotte, where is it? Atlanta, a lot in Boston. We have several in Boston. We got several here. We've got one in Gainesville. I think y'all have met Michelle.
Yes.
And she's our leader in Gainesville. We got not Ocala, because I'm in Ocala. Orlando, Tampa, and then we've got them as far west. Our furthest west one is Salt Lake City, Utah. We got to meet up. So, and we do have an annual summit, October 23 to 26. We meet every year in Orlando at the Florida Hotel. So I'll invite you to that now, because I won't invite you in because I won't remember. So go to summit.alchemistnation.com, and that's where you can see about the summit. Sign up. And if any of you got businesses, this is the first year. This year is the first year that we're actually allowing sponsors to come in and sponsor the summit. And the sponsors that we want are going to be people that can talk wisely about real estate, because we're going to put them on stage and have panels from our sponsors. So, but you can see about that, summit.alchemistnation.com. I didn't even do a QR code for that, which my CEO and his wife would probably ream me up one side down the other for not even, because I'm supposed to be talking about that all the time. Anyway, so what I want to talk to you about today, so we recently started the Alchemist Growth and Income Fund. Now what we do, we focus on multifamily, okay? As a group, now we talk all real estate. We can teach any kind of real estate, whatever you want to do. We've done it. We've got somebody in our group that's done it. We've got classes on it if you want them. But what our main focus is multifamily real estate. And we have a portfolio right now of about, I want to say 600. It's about 600 units, mostly in Cleveland and Jackson, Mississippi. We have another 300 units that are currently under agreement, and we're working on funding those. And then we have another 250 that we're looking at for the end of the year, for fourth quarter. That's going to put us, now understand that at the beginning of the year in January, we our CEO had 35 units. He said, I'm moving to Cleveland, and I'm going to have 250 units before my birthday on February 27th. So in December, he moved to Cleveland, and all he had was 35 units. And on the day before his birthday, he signed an agreement to acquire 380 unit portfolio in Cleveland. So, and we've been working really hard on that. Now I'll tell you a little bit about this as we get into the presentation, but what we do is we are stealing stuff away from slumlords and giving the people that don't want to live there, but they have to live there, we're giving them a clean and safe environment to live in. And we're changing neighborhoods. East Cleveland is a really rough place. I don't know if you guys know, most people say East Cleveland, people think, oh, east side of Cleveland. No, there's actually a city called East Cleveland. And it's on the east side of Cleveland, but you go a line and you're now no longer in Cleveland. Now you're in East Cleveland. And so there's some rough neighborhoods over there, but we're doing a lot of work to really clean places up. The city, the government has welcomed us in, saying, yes, please, we just need better landlords to come in, not be slumlords. The 380 unit portfolio that we got, that came from a guy that was IT, making $300,000 a year and living in Boston. And of course, he went to one of these groups, and he said, oh, if you want to get passive income, just invest in multifamily real estate. How many of y'all heard that so many times on the, right? There ain't no passive income in multifamily real estate unless you're a lender, okay? And even that's not passive, because you know if you don't do due diligence on the front end, you're going to have a lot of work left, right? So, but he had just been he bought a portfolio. It was 90% occupied. He let it cash flow, until all of a sudden he was feeding in money every month, right? And of course, then maintenance had to go by the wayside, and then so people started leaving, and it turns into a slum. And so he's an inadvertent slumlord. He never intended to be a slumlord. He just didn't know what he was doing, and he wasn't there to make the corrections. So we put boots on the ground, build a team, get management, get it under control, evict the tenants that need to be evicted, and start cleaning the place up. And so that's our model. We're buying units at or below $50,000 a door, and they still are renting for $700 to $800 a door. So you can do your math on that one, right? And you can see that provides a lot of cash flow. What it doesn't provide is a lot of appreciation, other than what the appreciation that we force. And so that's what our fund is. It's a debt fund. Okay, so and the reason is because there's not going to be a lot of appreciation there. So we just want to, but there's a lot of cash flow. So we want to, and people that want to invest with us, they invest with us so that they can get cash flow into their portfolio, because there's a lot of things that aren't cash flowing nowadays. I don't know how many of you invest in things like syndications, different things like that. There's a lot of syndications that are doing capital calls, and you're not getting good cash flow. First disclaimer, my lawyer said we had to put this on everything, including our flyers, anything that we've got that says Alchemist Growth and Income Fund. It has to have this disclaimer that past performance is not a guarantee of future results. I have so many sheaves of paperwork that basically just say you could lose all your money, right? But every fund manager does. Every investor should be used to seeing that stuff. But it's required by the SEC that we tell everyone you could lose your money. All right. And then the strategies in here are not going to necessarily be appropriate for everyone, because some people like them, some people don't. I'm just going to tell you about our fund real quick, and then I'm going to talk about some other stuff. But our fund returns passive income depending on how long you want to invest with us. I can advertise this to everyone in the world because it's a 506c fund. A 506c fund, if you don't know what that is, I'm going to teach you about what it is, because we're going to go into that. But it just means you have to be an accredited investor to invest in our fund, but it also allows us to advertise and talk freely about it with anyone. So our minimum buy-in is $50,000, but if you put $50,000 with us for 6 months, we'll give you a 7% return. Okay, 7% annual percentage yield, which is better than any bank's going to give you on a CD. The CDs are going at about 4% right now, right? So that's almost twice that. If you leave it with us for a year, we'll give you 9%. If you leave it with us for 2 years, we'll give you 12%. But that's limited to the first $5 million. After that, 12% is a lot of money to pay for capital. So we figure $5 million, we can handle that and keep it moving. But after that, it's going to go 9% will be the maximum. Like I said, we do what we're doing for social impact. We're taking care of people who don't want to live where they live. We're taking care of people who have to live where they live. And so we're doing a lot of good. We're cleaning up neighborhoods. We have an experienced team, diversified projects. Like I said, we're in 2 cities right now, Cleveland and Jackson, Mississippi. Same type of properties is what we're getting into. But what we've got our eyes on 8 different cities in the Midwest. And I could list them all for you. I've got them listed other places. I don't have them listed here. But we do run a multifamily mastermind, and this is what we do. We teach our mastermind to be good operators and good underwriters. And so we wanted to start the fund to actually be able to provide capital for them when they find the deals and help them get those things under contract. So, and then of course we practice responsible lending practices. One of the mantras, one of our sayings at Alchemist Nation is we promise to do everything legally, morally, and ethically. And if you're a person that doesn't want to do that legally, morally, and ethically, then find another group. We don't want to work with you. So, all right. So, legal fundraising. How many of you have raised funds for a project? Okay, a couple people. How many of you plan to raise funds for a project in the future? All right, everyone wants to. Well, I mean, we hear it all the time, right? How many times do we hear OPM? What does that stand for? Other people's money. We hear them talking. We hear a lot of real estate investors saying, don't do this with your own money, do it with other people's money, okay? It's important that you understand the legalities of raising money. And I will tell you this, most real estate investors don't. I've been doing this, I've only been doing it for about 3 years. Since I got out of the Army in 2016. I went into I went into corporate medicine for a little bit, did that until COVID. And then COVID hit. We drove from Fairbanks, Alaska to Tampa, Florida, where my father-in-law was in ICU here in Tampa. And we just took it as a calling from God that we need to be moved. So we moved down here, figured I'd walk into a job, and that 30 years of medical experience to be easy to walk into a job. Find out they don't want people with 30 years of medical experience. They want people with no experience that work for $30,000 a year. That wasn't me. So that's why we switched and became entrepreneurs. So, but I did the same thing. I went through this thing where everyone said, use other people's money. From the first book that I ever read, which was Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki, right? What does he talk about in there? He talks about using other people's money. They don't talk about how's the legal way to do that. Okay, you don't get that a lot. You just get the use other people's money, and you do these side deals under the table, and a lot of people don't understand what they're doing. Is that doing something?
It's blinking.
Is it blinking? It's probably because I'm shaking my hand or something. All right. So, but why does it matter? What can happen if you're found that you're raising funds illegally?
Go to jail.
You can. That's exactly right. Okay. There's fines. There's jail time. There's also, here's the thing. These are things that I did not realize until we put this fund together and started getting all the legalities for it back in January this year is when we started putting it together. So one of the things also is that anyone that wants to invest with us, any accredited investor that wants to invest with us, we have to run a background check on them. Now, what are we looking for in a background check? The only thing that we're looking for in a background check are our history of financial crimes. So if you've ever been sanctioned by the SEC, you cannot invest in our fund. And this isn't just our fund, this is anybody's fund. Okay? That's for accredited investors. Accredited investors, are anybody an accredited investor in here? Okay? Accredited investors have opportunities for investments that other people just don't get. Okay? And if you get a financial crime strike against you, you will lose those opportunities. So it's really important that you're doing things the right way so that doesn't happen. Now, like I said, most real estate investors are raising money and they're not doing it legally. They're not following the legal standards. People do that for 30 years. And I know this, I understand. I got people in my network been doing it for 30 years, right? And they're getting funds by text messaging someone and saying, hey, I got that $300,000 back. Do you want me to put it into a new deal, or do you want it back? You know, so they're doing it based on relationships. So these things don't come to light until somebody gets hurt, somebody loses money, gets hurt, goes to court, and files a complaint with the SEC. Okay, that's really when it comes to light. And honestly, on these smaller deals, like a single family home, it's probably not going to happen, right? It's usually when people take that model. And this actually happened, and this is why I put this class together. I met I was actually on a mastermind online with someone, and the kid came in and he was talking about, hey, if you come over and invest, I've got this guy, he's got a $35 million deal. We're looking for investors to come in. We're promising them 18% returns. And the guy running the mastermind and me both unmuted at the same time, and we were like, whoa, wait a minute. Do you realize that you're breaking the law right now? Stop it. And the guy that was running the mastermind, he got really mad at him. I text messaged on the side like, look, bro, get on. Here's my booking link. Book a call with me. Let's talk. And so he called and talked, and I explained to him, and he's like, I'm going to have the guy that's raising money call you. So he called me, gets on my calendar, calls, and he's trying to raise $35 million, and he doesn't know what a private placement memorandum is. He doesn't know what a subscription agreement is. He doesn't understand any of this stuff. And I'm like, bro, this is not good. Okay, you got to do this right. And he's like, well, I've done this for 20 years, and this is the way I always did it. I'm like, you can't do it on a deal this big. Those were deals that were like $3 and $4 million. This is $35 million. You're gonna raise eyebrows. Okay, SEC is going to see this, or someone's going to find out and file a complaint. So SEC makes it really, really easy to file. They call it a whistleblower. You know, you go to the SEC webpage, first thing you see right there on the side, whistleblower. Just push a button, put it in. So it really does matter that we do it correctly. So So everyone understand, have anyone heard of Regulation D or Regulation A? Okay, these are exemptions from filings with the SEC. Most securities, okay, security is when you buy a stock, okay, in a company, you are getting a security, all right, which means that you're buying part of the company, you're buying equity in that company, and with the expectation that you're going to make a profit on that, okay. It's the same thing when you're buying part of a real estate deal. Anybody familiar with syndications? Okay, syndications is where they pool money in order to come in on the limited partnership to a company who's run by general partners that's going to buy a big building. Okay, usually it's apartments or a commercial real estate, things like that. And so the limited partners, all they do is they bring capital and they're putting their money in and they're expecting a return. Okay, so they're buying a security. That's technically what it is. You're buying a security. It doesn't matter how it's secured. You're paying money in with the expectation of a return. So Regulation D and Regulation A are the two regulations that provide exemptions to all the SEC registration requirements. SEC registration requirements are mostly for things like stocks, bonds, all those kind of things. Those have to be registered with the SEC. They go through a lot of scrutiny. Reg D and Reg A are the ones that we use as real estate investors. We mostly use Reg D. Reg A, how many of you have heard like the bigger pockets and they're like, invest in our fund with as little as $10, right? Those are Reg A, okay? Anybody can invest in them and they don't have like minimum investment amounts, and it's not limited to accredited investors, but they get lots of scrutiny. They have to file a lot of paperwork to do that. So it's a lot of scrutiny from the SEC. So, and we'll explain that here in a minute. What we work under, generally, most real estate investors, we work under Reg D, okay? And this is the exemption that we use. So overview of Reg D, it aims to provide exemptions that simplify the capital raising. Okay, most of these people that are selling securities, what are they? They're a big company that goes public, right? So there's huge amount. Everybody ever heard the story of Crazy Eddie? You guys hear about him back in the 70s, 80s, I think, 70s and early 80s. He was up in the Northeast. He got in a lot of trouble. So he was skimming. He was running it was like 35 different electronic stores. Look it up on YouTube. It's really interesting. He had like 35 electronic stores. He had started from one. He did all these crazy advertisements on TV. But he would have these crazy sales like Christmas in August. We're having a crazy Christmas in August sale, selling radios, selling 8-track tapes, and you probably don't even know what an 8-track tape is, but selling all this kind of cool electronic stuff, right? Well, it turns out he was skimming and doing stuff and cooking the books. He had actually hired somebody and sent him to accounting school to learn how to cook the books. And he was cooking the books, and they were just taking loads of cash money out of the business. Well, that was all fine and dandy until they got so big they decided to go public and do an IPO. Well, when you go public and do an IPO, all of a sudden there's huge scrutiny on everything that you're doing, and of course that's when they got caught. And they didn't know there was going to be that kind of scrutiny on their books, and after a while they could no longer do it. He ended up going to jail and stuff. Anyway, so I just say that to say this. When most securities, if they're not being operated under an exemption, they have a lot of scrutiny. They have a lot of people looking at their books, checking everything before it ever goes to market to be sold on a securities board like the New York Stock Exchange or something like that. So exemptions from registration allow small companies like us to operate and be able to raise capital so that we can do things like our real estate deals, okay? And it provides certain protections to different levels of investors, okay? So it's just about following the rules. 506B, the provision of the rules, this is what most people are raising money under, 506B. Why? Because most people are raising money from their friends and their family, okay? Now, I will tell you this, you will hear the term, the friends and family exception, when people are talking about raising money. Oh, I can raise money from my dad and my friends and all this kind of stuff, and I don't have to register anything. I don't have to report anything. Well, in the actual SEC regulations, there is no friends or family exception. There's 506B and there's 506C. but they both require reporting. Okay, so Rule 506B permits issuers to raise unlimited amount of funds from accredited investors, but you can raise only from 35 non-accredited investors. Okay, and even the non-accredited investors have to be able to show some level of sophistication. You got a question? Oh, you're just scratching your head? All right, cool. I do that sometimes too, man. All right. So understand, when it comes to raising capital for your business, there is no exception to the rules. Okay. Now, I only say that, I'm not saying that all of y'all need to go write PPMs for your next single family home that you're going to, raise money, have somebody come in and make the down payment for you. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that if it came down to it and it goes to a court of law, somebody gets hurt. What did I say? Somebody gets hurt. Somebody loses money. They take you to court or make a complaint to the SEC. Those are the things that are that could happen, right? So if that happens, then you can't go in front of a judge and say, "Oh, I was doing the friends and family exception." There is no such thing. It's 506B, right? So here's comparison. This is a little bit small, but this sort of compares Regulation A with a 506B and a 506D. Does this have a laser on it? I don't think it does. All right. So Regulation A allows accredited or non-accredited. That's like the crowdfunding thing from, I think even Grant Cardone's got one of these Reg A funds that you can invest with Grant Cardone for 10 bucks, as little as 10 bucks. And but it limits it to $75 million raised. And then they have a lot of they have to do a lot of extensive disclosures. They have to do ongoing reporting to the SEC and stuff like that. Reg D, 506B, okay, which is what people think is the friends and family exemption, but it's really not. That allows up to 35 non-accredited. There's no explicit time limit. They have minimal disclosures for accredited investors, but if it's a non-accredited investor, it requires a lot more. You really have to make sure that the non-accredited investors understand what they're getting into. One thing is you cannot do general soliciting for it. So you have to be able to prove that you had an established relationship from someone before you ever talked to them about raising money. So if you met somebody the first time here, okay, and then you met them again at the main meetup on the second Tuesday of the month, and then you met them again for coffee, and you document that. Now I've got 3 meets with them, and now I can say, hey, do you invest in real estate? I've got a deal that's something I'm working on, right? But to just go in front of somebody like today, I've got deals that I'm working on, and I'm raising money. I'm raising $400,000 right now. But I just met you. I've had 2 meetings with you, right? This is our second. But I just met you, so I couldn't raise that money from you. But if you're a credit investor, you can invest in my fund, because I can do that I don't have to have an established relationship with you for that. So but as far as reporting, there's no ongoing federal reporting. However, there are required filings. Okay, a Form D is required to be filed with the SEC, and all the states have what are called blue sky filings. A blue sky filing simply it tells the Secretary of State, hey, you're in Colorado, I'm in Florida, I'm raising money for a 506B real estate deal, and somebody in Colorado, this person, they just invested with me, and it costs you like $50 to do a blue sky filing to inform their Secretary of State. Why they have to know? I have no idea. Probably because they want to know that they're going to get money back on an investment, and they're going to want their piece. Isn't that what all states want, right? They want their taxes, right? Especially in Colorado, because they took $6,500 from me, and I'm still upset about that. But I wholesaled a house up there. Never set foot in the state of Colorado. Bought a house and sold it the same day. I did a double close, and made $90,000 on it. And state of Colorado took $6,500 from me. And I still haven't seen if my CPA can get it back, because I didn't work there. I was still working in Florida. All right, so eligibility requirements. So now we're talking. Yes, sir.
With interactions with those people, Do they have to be in person, or could it be email, phone call?
It can be phone calls, emails. You just have to document contacts. If you're running a 506B fund, it's really important that you document contacts, because when you're running a fund, you're usually aggregating a lot of people's money together, and the chances of some legal action coming up are much higher than if you're just dealing with friends and family and you're doing a small, like a quadplex flip or something like that, and you're having a couple people come in to help you with the down payment stuff. So, all right. So, definition of accredited investor. Okay, there's financial criteria can be based on income. All right, if you have an income of more than $200,000 for the last 2 years and you expect to make $200,000 the following year, you're considered an accredited investor. That goes up if you are married and you file jointly. So now it's $300,000. So it's $300,000 married, filed jointly for the last 2 years, expecting to make the same amount for the following year. Or you have a net worth of $1 million. Okay, now that net worth includes things like your IRAs, any real estate that you own that's not your primary home. Okay, anything to do with your primary home cannot be counted in accredited investor status. It still counts for your net worth, but not for your accredited investor status. So it only takes a few person with few houses, and they've got a couple $100,000 of equity in each of those houses to be considered an accredited investor. All right. So non-accredited investors, by the rules in 506B, they have to have some knowledge. They have to have the knowledge to be able to evaluate if it's a good deal or not. Okay. If not, then they need to have been working with someone who does, usually a licensed advisor. A financial advisor has the licenses to be able to advise them properly. Okay. So, and then there's disclosure obligations. So we're required to provide very clear disclosures. Like I said, I have a whole sheafs of paper that are very long and cost a lot of money from lawyers that basically could have been written in about one sentence, which says, you could lose all your money. That's basically all they say. But the PPM, it lists all of the risks and all of the conflicts of interest, and it tells about who the operators are and the type of investments, and it gives you a little bit about what the fund's purposes are and things like that. So, but like I said, with accredited investors, the disclosures are really minimal. You can raise money from an accredited investor by showing them a picture of what you want to do and show them a pro forma in a spreadsheet. And a lot of accredited investors, if they understand the market and they understand what you're doing, they'll go, okay, yeah, we'll do that. But with non-accredited investors, you really have to be careful. You have to provide very specifics. You have to tell them the risks, make sure that they understand that they could lose money, right? And it's very important. Transparency is huge. That's why we use platforms, like we use the investor platform, which provides a portal for our investors to come in, look around. We put all of our business documents and stuff in there so that they can see anything that we're doing or anything about the deal. We'll go into that, and I put regular updates in there and everything. So being transparent and being communicative is very important. So legal considerations. Federal, this is something that not everyone understands. Not only does the Fed monitor the securities, but each state has their own level of it also. Okay, so there's federal, it's a dual regulatory framework, and you have to, and the states all differ. This is what makes it so difficult. Working in one state, it makes it difficult when you cross the state lines. Okay, and legal complications just by crossing state lines. I actually sourced a loan for someone, a private money lender, who asked me to broker his money into a deal, and the company that I was brokering the money to was in Florida, and the property that we put the mortgage on was in Chicago. Guess what interest rates we used? We used Florida interest rates because it was a Florida company. Okay? Guess what interest rates I was supposed to use? Illinois, because it's in Illinois. Guess what usury rate? Who knows what usury is? Usury is when you're considered to be charging so much interest that the state considers it a crime. Okay? What's usury in Florida? Anybody know? 18%. 18% in Florida is the maximum amount that you can offer as interest on a loan or charge as interest on a loan, and that includes all points and everything except fees, right? So like if you go in for like a loan and you charge 2 points up front, well, now your maximum is 6%, 16%, right? So guess what usury is in Illinois? 8%. Which didn't bother anybody until that guy stopped making his payments on that $330,000 loan. And now I'm talking to the lawyers in Chicago, and they're going like, yeah, I don't know if we're going to be able to enforce this. I'm like, we're still working on that one. So that was actually the first loan that I brokered into anything. And the guy knew I was a rookie and didn't know what I was doing. But anyway, it was great for a year and 2 months while it was still being paid on. And then the guy stopped making payments. So, all right, let's see here. So private placement a private placement memorandum is, it tells you a bunch of details about the deal. It tells you all of the risks involved, what you're going to use the money for. This is important. And then it provides financial statements, okay? But what is the biggest thing that a PPM says? You could lose all your money. Yeah. It's basically what you lose all your money. It says it over and over and over again. And then there's subscription agreements. So a subscription agreement, when anyone is buying into a deal, they get the PPM, and then the subscription agreement basically says, you understand the risks of this? Yes. How do you understand the risk? Boom, boom, boom. It makes them fill out a questionnaire, and then basically that they say, yes, I understand I could lose all my money. And then they have to sign for it, right? So they understand the terms and conditions. And then there's a lot of anti-fraud provisions in Reg D. In both of the 506B and 506C exemptions, there's a lot of anti-fraud provisions. There's more fraud out there going on than you can shake a stick at. I've had friends lose money, crazy stuff. Like, I don't even understand how to. I had one of my friends that comes to my meetup. I have a coffee meetup every Thursday at 8. He was coming to that. He put $250,000 into escrow for a deal. The deal fell through. The person running the deal, the operator, somehow got that title company to send the escrow money to a different title company. And then that title company released the escrow to her, $250,000. This guy's out $250,000. And he can't get the FBI to take the case. He can't get a lawyer to take the case because they all say there's not enough money there for it to make it worth it. But yeah, so he's like pretty bummed. But false statements, look, you can't say, here's the big thing you can't say. I guarantee you this is going to make money. If you say that, you have made a false statement, and they can take you to court. Okay? If you lose their money, if you lose even any of their money, right? You return all their principal and they didn't make money. If you said, I guarantee you're going to make money, that's a false statement. Okay? And prosecutable. Issuer responsibilities. Issuers are responsible for ensuring that all the information provided is accurate, not misleading. Okay, so there's all of these protections for investors in these exemptions. This is why they say you can't just go out and raise money. You have to do it under one of these exemptions. If you do, and like I say, if you're an honest broker and you do raise money without these things and you give everybody their money back, you're gonna be fine. Everybody's gonna love you, right? You made them money. It's when things go wrong, that's when people get in trouble. So, and then there are record keeping and reporting requirements. So you have to keep record of your communication with the investors. You have to keep records of your of where all the money goes. That has to be open and available to any of the investors under these regulations. So the conclusion is that many investors are taught to raise money the wrong way. Why? Because we're taught. Go ask your dad if he has $100,000 in his IRA. You can help him move it to a self-directed IRA and then put that into your deal. Okay? Yes, you can. You can also get in trouble. All right. So Reg D, most people who are raising money don't understand Reg D. A lot of people are trying to do it without ever going to see a lawyer. Look, I can get some really, really good legal paperwork. I've got some great prompts for ChatGPT that will pump something out that you cannot tell it wasn't done by a lawyer. All right. But the lawyer gives you the advice. The ChatGPT doesn't say, hey, don't do this and don't do that, or don't do that, or you could be held liable for it, whereas a lawyer will. So I don't know if my lawyer's putting stuff through ChatGPT or not, but it probably is. But it makes some good stuff. Terms to Google or put in ChatGPT if you're interested. CapSource Inc. If you put CapSource, comma, Incorporated, you'll get a great story about some things going on. Pick Renegade Properties. The Pick Renegade Properties is interesting. It was a 506c fund. He was a partial owner in a 506c fund. And the only thing he did was he had 4 non-accredited investors in the fund that he had raised money from. And he did not verify that they were accredited investors, got like $600,000 worth of fines just for not properly verifying that he had all accredited investors in the fund. Wells Real Estate Investment LLC, that's a place out of Miami area. They raised like $60 million from all sorts of crazy. They did all sorts of crazy things. It ended up turning into something similar to a Ponzi scheme. But they raised the money. They didn't have PPM. They didn't do anything. They weren't raising the money legally. And then they bought a couple small multifamilies, but they were offering the amount back. They were saying they had these great returns. But what they were doing is they were playing options. They were putting in the stock market and stuff like that. And they ended up losing like $6 or $7 million in the stock market, and then everything fell apart. And for a while, they tried to get more investors in, and they were paying out. You know what a Ponzi scheme is, right? It's where you get investors in, and the money that the investors put in, you use that to pay out the other investors. And it stops as soon as you stop getting new people in. Yeah. So here's the thing. I think a lot of people that get caught up in that kind of stuff, that's not what they intended to do. It just sort of happened. They went and did a great deal and made 20%. So then they started saying, hey, I can get 20% on your money. If I can do it once, I can do it again. And then all of a sudden they can't get 20%. So what do? They start taking a new investor and paying that 20% to them. And all of a sudden they're stuck in this Ponzi scheme, and that's not what they intended to do. So it can happen. But that's why we need to do things legally, morally, legally, ethically. And here's this is what the SEC. So if anything goes to court, if anything you ever do goes to court, this is the test that they use. This was the Howey test. It was developed back in 1930 something, right? And the guy's name was Howey, and he went to court and he said he wasn't offering securities. And they said, yes, you are offering securities. How do we know you're offering securities? These are the four criteria that they put. Is it an investment of money? Somebody bring money to the table. Is it a common enterprise? Okay, so is it a joint venture, or are you pooling money, multiple people's money together to do the deal? Is there an expectation of profits? So are the investors expecting to get something back? And are you profiting from other people's efforts? Okay, if those 4 criteria are met, it's considered a security, no matter how you have it organized. Okay, we hear all the time about, in real estate world, we hear people talking about, I'm doing a joint venture. You're doing the joint venture. Yes, I'm the operator. What are your partners doing? They're my capital partners. They just bring capital to the deal. Okay, SEC will look at that as selling securities. You are selling securities. Why? Because in a joint venture, everyone has to have a job. You can't be a partner with somebody whose only job was to bring money. So if all 4 of those elements, and even loans, the SEC has ruled that people doing loans and giving mortgages back to people with a straight loan with a mortgage can be considered selling security. Okay. Now, here's the deal. So remember, it has to be a common enterprise, pooling, or joint venture, right? So if you've got one person lending on one property with one mortgage, you're probably okay. There's no pooling, okay? There's no joint venture. That's a loan that's been secured by a mortgage. If you got 5 people lending on one property with 5 mortgages, now you got a problem, because now we've got pooling and joint venture, right? And the other 3 are automatically met. So this is where people run into trouble. And like I say, you start off doing it one mortgage for one property, one deal. We're doing it. And then you end up, your deals start getting bigger, and you start bringing more people in, and now you're selling securities. So a lot of times it's people not doing it intentionally, they're just doing it unknowingly. And like I said, JV, a capital partner is not a partner. Partners have to be doing something. Okay, now here's one. You can be investor relations. Investor relations is a deal. That's making sure that the investors have all the communication, make sure that they got all the documents, stuff like that, and you're raising money. So now you can be part of the GP. That's your job, investor relations, right? But just bringing money to a deal is not a job. That's an investment. And if something happens, it can be selling securities. So, so this is why funds exist, right? Funds exist to allow us to pool money so that we can do bigger deals, right? Now, there's about 10 to 12 different legal structures that you can go through for a fund, all right? And I'm not going to go through all of them. Two of the more common types are syndications and debt funds. How many of you are familiar with syndications? How about debt funds? Fewer are familiar with debt funds than syndications. Good. So here's the steps for setting up a fund. Like I said, we started our fund in January. We just started raising money into our fund in June. So it takes time. And we had coachings, and we had lawyers, and we had a bunch of people helping us, and we've got a platform. But you have to know your market and put together your team. So it's all this stuff. I'm not going to go through everything. It takes time. It takes money. Now, it's less money than what it would cost you, like if you had to pay bail. So we go that way. A debt fund versus a syndication. So syndication is usually for one property, right? When they pool people's money to become the limited partners in a multifamily, 200-unit multifamily deal in the middle of Texas, right? That's a syndication, right? The nice things about syndications is you actually own part of that property. So it comes with the same benefits as owning real estate. You'll actually get a K1 at the end of the year, and the K1 will show how much depreciation that your property got, how much appreciation it earned. You'll get how much was returned to you off of your investment. So all of that kind of stuff. But the nice thing is that depreciation helps offset some of those earnings, right? With a debt fund, it doesn't work that way. So a debt fund, basically you are lending into the fund and getting interest only payments back. And at the end of the term, you get all of your money, all of your capital back. So you don't get a K1 at the end of the year, you get a 1098. And it gets reported as interest earned, okay? However, one of the downfalls of syndications is that you own part of the property. And if the property starts losing money, you start losing money. And if the property has to refinance, and this is a big deal right now, if the property has to refinance, and they were refinanced when they originally went into syndication, they got their money for 4%, and now they're having to refinance at 8%, and that can kill the whole deal. So that's one of the downfalls of the syndications also. So it's a higher reward, but it's definitely higher risk with syndications. So here's what investors are concerned about today. At least this is what we see. Market instability. All right. For the last year, the market's been doing huge jumps up and down, craziness. Are we going into recession? Are we not going into recession? Are we going to war? Are we not going to war? Is Trump putting tariffs on? Is he not putting tariffs on? Is every time they make an announcement on TV, is doing this, right? And some people are sick of it, right? Fears of the recession, of course, rising expenses, the trade wars, the tariffs, all that kind of stuff. And then the debt maturity wall. Right now in 2025 in the United States of America, over $7 trillion of commercial loans have to be refinanced. You're in a good spot. But why is that? How many of you know how the commercial loans work? It's different than a residential, okay? A commercial loan can be amortized at 30 years, but the refinance is required usually at 5 or 7 years. Okay, if you're doing an agency loan, which is, who knows what an agency loan is? What is it? Agency? Freddie, okay? Freddie or Fannie, right? So an agency loan which qualifies, that's the cheapest money you can get. right? That's as far as for commercial and commercial residential. That's the cheapest money you can get is agency loans. Agency loans, they those things are about 6%, I think. Is that about right?
Yeah.
Is that what you're seeing? 6% right now for agency loans. Not too bad. But if your agency loan 10 years ago was at 4% and now you're refinancing at 6%, might not be good. But agency loans are the only ones that go 10 years, right? So all the rest of them are, what's your average? 5 or 7 year balloons normally?
About
7 years? Okay. So it depends on who you're with, but a 5 or 7 year balloon is normal. Why do they do that? Anybody know? When you're paying an amortized loan, what are you paying in the first 5 years? Mostly interest. You're just paying interest. You're not paying hardly anything off of that. So this is brilliant by the commercial bankers. This is why the people that make the most money in real estate are the banks. It's always the banks. This is why, and this is one that every Monday we teach a class called Be the Bank. Because if you really want to make money in real estate, you have to start lending, because the lenders are the ones that make the most money in real estate by far. Unless somebody doesn't give you your $330,000 loan back, stops making payments on it, then that's when the lawyers make the money, exactly. So a debt fund is a little safer. A debt fund has predictable cash flow. As soon as you invest into a debt fund, normally the next month or the next quarter, it starts cash flowing back to you. You start receiving interest-only payments back. It has downside protection because it's in a senior debt position over equity, and I'll show that to you in the capital stack here in just a second. Lower volatility. Your returns aren't measured by the market. You're basically getting interest back in a debt fund. And then our structure is our investors receive pro rata distributions of interest and principal. I don't even know what that means. All right, here we go. Here's a capital stack. All right, anybody ever seen this before? All right, this is a capital stack for like a commercial property, right? Down on the bottom, you got what's called senior debt. 90% of the time, that's a bank. It's a bank or sometimes it's debt funds, but it's what your mortgage brokers are selling, right? It's senior debt. That's what they're always looking for. Mezzanine debt. There's very few mortgage brokers that will go into this, but that's like a second mortgage. It's still secured by the property, but it's a secondary loan. Okay? Do you do mezzanine debt? No, just do senior debt. Yeah. I talk to mortgage brokers and they say they do mezzanine debt, and then they come back with a primary mortgage offer for me. And I'm like, I've got a primary lender. I need mezzanine debt. And they're like, oh, yeah, okay. But here's the thing. So this has the lowest rate of return. Okay, your senior debt, your Freddie and Fannie stuff, they're getting 6%. Mezzanine debt usually gets a little higher. All right, usually that's around 10%. Sometimes it's bridge loans, things like that. It's a secondary loan on the property to get stuff done. You're using mezzanine debt when you're doing massive rehab. That's one of the things that we're doing in Cleveland. You know, we're turning approximately 14 units a week in Cleveland from unoccupied to ready for occupancy. So you need money to do that, and that's where your mezzanine debt comes in. Okay. Now, equity, preferred equity, and common equity, these are the LP stuff. Preferred equity goes to the GP side of the house, and common equity is usually the LP side of the house. Usually, on a normal syndication, 70% of the profits go here, right there, to the common equity. That's why you'll see these advertisements for syndication where they're saying your total return should be in the neighborhood of 80 to 90%. Okay, that's because it's this, and those returns don't come until 5 to 7 years later, because you do your forced appreciation or stabilization of the asset, and then you start cash flowing a little bit, and then at year 7, when the cap rates drop, you sell, and then when you sell, that's when everyone gets their money. Okay, they'll get a little bit of the cash flow off the rents as you're going through it, but the big payoff comes when they sell. Okay, because they're getting 70% of the profit. If I bought something at $4 million and I sell it for $7 million, the profit's what, $3 million. Okay, if I got 10 people in there and they get 70% of $3 million, it's a good chunk of change, right? So, however, this is also the highest risk. Now remember, these have ownership in the property. So if as the property goes, these investments go. If the property does well, these investments do great. And people make 80% on their money in 5 years, which is a great return, right? But if the properties don't do well, these guys get what are called capital calls. What a capital call is when the general operators start calling their investors and saying, we need more money. We need you to send us another 50 grand or 100 grand or however much it is, because we've got this coming up and we're not going to be able to meet our expenses if we don't pay for it. And by the way, you're an owner of this building. And so as a partial owner of the building, if the building fails, you fail, right? Not so down here. These are where your debt funds invest, okay? Senior and mezzanine debt. The senior debt and mezzanine debt, what do they pay? Interest. There's no ownership. So if the building goes bad, what happens? Who gets the building? Exactly, right here. These guys lose all their money, and these guys get the building, right? So the senior debt and the mezzanine debt, those are the safest investments because they're secured by the property, by the asset. Okay, so that's why it just pays off interest. And it's at a lower rate than what these guys would get, but there's no ownership. All right. Everybody understand that? Any questions about that? That's a common capital stack. And in the PPM, you'll get a list of here's what the capital stack looks like. Boom, 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 boom. Here's who gets paid first on everything. So I've got a separate project that I'm doing a beach house, and in my PPM, it specifically states this person gets paid first, always the bank. Bank gets paid first, and then anything that's left over goes to this person, and then it's always the investors and with their preferred return, and then this, and then this, and then the extra investors' equity, and then and only then do I make anything. So only if there's money left over after all that will I make something. So capital stack. So syndications, like I say, syndications have things like capital calls. Rising rates, rising interest rates, what's that do for a debt fund? It's good or bad? Why? It's interest. What do we make? Debt fund makes interest, right? So if the bank goes from charging 6% to 8%, well, I can go from charging 10% to 12%, right? So if debt fund is good. I don't know how that slide got in there. Yeah, so this just explains. With our fund is a debt fund, we do 7, 9, or 12%. So we know that with real estate, how many of you heard the term that real estate makes more millionaires than any other industry, right? I don't know that that's true anymore. Probably is. Probably over time it's true. I know today there's a lot of people making millionaire, being the Bitcoin millionaires and crypto, and you got stock market pumping out millionaires. They say like several thousand people become millionaires every second or something. I don't know. I could make up some kind of stat, but there's a lot of millionaires, right? It doesn't take much to make $1 million nowadays. But what I will say is that real estate is the way that the wealthy choose to preserve their wealth. So it's definitely because you buy land, guess what? They ain't making more of it, right? So you know it's safe and it never goes to zero. You can't say the same thing about stock market. Just ask Sears and ask Kmart. Whoever had those stocks and they were holding them on because they knew they were going to come back, I feel sorry for you. But doesn't really hold on to your wealth. Returns have been good. Low interest rates. Pent up demand. This is what we're seeing in the market. And here's the thing. In the market right now, we got a lot less housing than what's needed. We've got, we're going to grow over 60 million in the next 25 years. And there's not enough housing for all of it. Look, even with the baby boomers, I mean, some of us are baby boomers. I'm Gen X. I'm almost a baby boomer. But even with what we call the silver tsunami, how many of you heard that term, silver tsunami? The baby boomers, as they age out and either get rid of all their real estate or die, and then their real estate gets gotten rid of for them. Even with that, there's still not enough housing to meet the demand right now. And so what are people turning to? Ages 20 to 34, they're renting. And where are they renting? They're renting in multifamily. So multifamily is a very good market to be in at this stage of the game. And so that's what we invest in. We invest in multifamily. It does provide a hedge against inflation, because when inflation goes up, rents go up. And so usually you're able to keep up with things. At most, you might be under rent for a year if you stay on top of things. Now, what we see is there's a lot of landlords that don't. And you'll see a lot of landlords have very undervalued rents. And they're like, well, I'm not cash flowing. I'm like, no wonder you're not cash flowing. Your rent's $700 and market rent's $1,300. So, yeah. Anyway, so current environment is fraught with risk for traditional syndications. Debt funds like AGIF offers gives investors a way to add into your portfolio some cash flow. It's not that we suggest that all of your money should go into a debt fund just so you can cash flow it. Although if you were going to put all of your money into a annuity, debt fund's probably better. But debt fund has a little better record than annuities in general. But it does provide steady cash flow. Like I said, our 12% pays out monthly, our 9%, 7% pays out quarterly. And so as soon as you put it in, it starts cash flowing back to you. And then our structure, focus, and management are designed to provide transparency, security, reliable income, even in volatile markets. So, but like I said, you have to be an accredited investor. If you're not an accredited investor, then you can't invest in the debt fund, unfortunately. And there's my link. So if you have any questions, if you want to talk about the fund, you want to talk about your own raising money, one thing that I do also is I consult for people who want to start a fund. If you're getting into multifamily and you're going to do multiple deals and you think, hey, it'd be nice to have a couple $1 million sitting there when I want to do a deal, well, that's what a fund is for. And so I can help you with that. I do some consulting for helping other people start funds. I've got one client who is actually raising money into a fund, a $5 million fund, so he can trade options. He makes 9% a month on options, trading options, consistently. I've seen all of his numbers. He put $50,000 into an account, and every month he draws $4,000 to $7,000 out of that account, and he's still got $55,000 sitting in the account. He's up to this year, he's already pulled like $29,000 out. So he's like, if I can do it $50,000, I can do it $5 million. So yeah, and he only makes trades 5 minutes a month. First Monday of every month, he goes in, sets his trades, and then he doesn't look at it anymore. So he's got a system. But anyway, if you just want to talk with me, you ask me questions about anything, talk about Alchemist Nation, want to ask me about the summit that everyone here should be at, because it's like the greatest event of the year. We're going to have a great time. Yeah, just get on my calendar. That link will get you on my calendar, and there you go. That's it. I'm done.
Thank you.
Anybody got any questions?
I do.
Yeah.
Started your fund in January. What did you guys have on your team?